It was quite unusual. Normally, that kind of rebuttal takes place after a State of the Union address that the president would give, which actually the president will give the State of the Union address in approximately 2 weeks. However, the fact that they gave the networks, gave the Democrats a chance to have a rebuttal for what you might call a normal Oval Office address tells you that this was not a normal Oval Office address. There was a lot of debate. The president basically made a political speech arguing in favor of a specific policy, and I think the networks felt or made a decision that if they were going to allow the president to make that speech, in particular after denying President Obama the opportunity to make a speech on immigration reform that many considered roughly a similar speech that was in 2014, if they were going to having denied Obama the chance and they were going to give that chance to Trump, that they really did need to give the other side a chance to make its case as well. But that's not how things normally work on our networks when it comes to a rebuttal by the opposition.
Now, during this speech last night, the fact checkers were out in force. There was a lot of criticism over the numbers that President Trump gave. What do you think about that?
Well, this president has a long-standing record of telling falsehoods. I mean, the Washington Post has been keeping track. They have found that the president has made a lie or a misleading statement somewhere over 7,000 times in the first 700 or so days of his presidency. That's not a good record. There were a number of pieces of information last night that were not accurate. The president talked about a crisis in terms of illegal migrant border crossings. And the fact is, just for one example, that the number of illegal migrant border crossings has been going down in this country over the past 20 years. It's significantly below where it was. I believe it's in about 1/4 of the number that it was 20 years ago. So that's just one example among many. Look, this is a president who will say something false, as has been shown by the Washington Post and many other fact checkers, and then when it's demonstrated that that it was false, he doubles down and repeats it. So it is important that the media do these fact checks.
We're now in week 3 of the shutdown, the second longest in U.S. history to actually shut down the government. Did Trump's speech last night change anyone's mind to get us out of this impasse?
I'd be very surprised. In fact, look, the president himself doesn't appear to have been convinced that this speech was going to do any good. According to a New York Times report today, the president was in a meeting yesterday, an off-the-record meeting with some news anchors. But according to people who were in the room, he said, and I quote, talking about the speech he was about to give, quote, "It's not going to change a damn thing, but I'm still doing it," end quote. And he added it was because his advisors, quote, "say it's worth it," end quote. So it doesn't even seem that he thought this speech was going to do any good. But apparently he did it anyway. And I also saw another report that he's going to be visiting Texas, even though that visit also he dismissed as kind of a photo op that he didn't think was going to do much good. But again, his advisors were pushing him to do it. If he's himself not convinced that the speech was going to have much of an effect, I can't imagine it's going to have much of an effect.
So where do things go from here? There is this option of introducing a national emergency where then the president could push through the funding for this border wall. Could that really happen, do you think?
I've read that some constitutional experts think that he has the authority to do this, but it certainly would be challenged. This is not a monarchy. This is not a dictatorship in this country. The president of the United States has emergency powers to take action when it comes to essentially things like wartime. I don't understand how this could possibly fit into that scenario. The most relevant Supreme Court case involved President Harry Truman, who I believe in 1947 attempted to nationalize the steel industry because he deemed it a national security crisis, relating to the Cold War, and the Supreme Court denied that he had that authority. I can't imagine that they would recognize that this is something that qualifies as a national security crisis above that, especially given the numbers. But who knows with this president, honestly? I mean, that's really where we're at. We don't know exactly what he's going to try. And he has pushed the norms of democratic rule before, and he might just do it again. If he was going to do it, last night's speech would have been an opportune time to do it. So perhaps he's thought better of it.
Reifowitz, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us there from New York.